Now that the United Kingdom has left the EU, the question is, what's next? Britain is indeed now freshly positioned to carve out its place in the world and reset complex relationships with a variety of partners. It's no surprise that the UK-Africa Investment Summit convened less than a fortnight ago, even as the United States Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has also said recently that he's keen to see a UK-US trade deal on a fast track. Let's listen to what Prime Minister Boris Johnson said at the UK-Africa Investment Summit.
Because I appreciate, as I say, that there is no shortage of governments out there touting for your business. China, I must mention the competition, but I better. I mean, why not? China, Russia, Germany. I'm told there's going to be a conference in France fairly soon. But in the words of an old Akan proverb that I picked up in Ghana, all fingers are not the same. There's wisdom in these Akan proverbs. All fingers are not the same and all countries are not the same. And the UK boasts a breadth and a depth of expertise that simply cannot be matched by any other nation. And that's why we are one of the biggest partners for countries across Africa. We want to build a new future as a global free trading nation. That's what we're doing now. That's what we'll be embarking on the 31st of January of this month. But I want to intensify and expand that trade in ways that go far beyond what we sell you or you sell us. But there's no point in the UK reducing the amount of coal we burn if we then trundle over to Africa and line our pockets by encouraging African states to use more of it. Is there? We all breathe the same air, we live beneath the same sky, we all suffer when carbon emissions rise and the planet warms. So from today, the British government will no longer provide any new direct official development assistance, investment, export credit or trade promotion for thermal coal mining or coal power plants overseas. To put it simply, not another penny of UK taxpayers' money will be directly invested in digging up coal or burning it for electricity. But one thing that unites African countries is ambition and optimism, and, by comparison with much of the rest of the world, quite staggering levels of growth. More than half the world's 15 fastest growing economies are in Africa. Two-thirds of African economies are expanding faster than the global average. Africa is the future, and the UK has a huge and active role to play in that future. And I hope you agree. Because we are and we will be a partner, your partner, through thick and thin.
All right, through thick and thin. With us on Global Business Report today is Harriet Thompson, the UK Deputy High Commissioner. Ma'am, you are welcome to the Global Business Report.
Thank you. Nice to see you again.
Fantastic. Same here. We were at your residence for the press conference that led to the UK-Africa Investment Summit. So speaking of which, if you could remind our viewers, what exactly is the UK-Africa? What was it about?
So, I mean, I think, as you've mentioned, the timing of it was very deliberate, just less than 2 weeks before the UK left the EU, and the first major international engagement of Boris Johnson's new government. Deliberately designed to show the world that we are looking very differently at our relationships across the world as we leave the EU, and particularly at the continent of Africa. Now, we already have a very strong commercial relationship between the UK and Africa, but the Africa Investment Summit was designed to boost that, to boost the momentum, and to really see over the coming months, years, decades, that relationship move from strength to strength.
So with regards to the objectives of the conference, could you list any others, or that was the top one, just to boost the relationship?
So that's the primary one, but it's important to remember that when we talk about boosting that relationship, we're not just talking about the government-to-government relationship. This goes beyond the development assistance that people, I think, have traditionally talked about or thought about when they think about that relationship. The UK-Africa Investment Summit really brought in our strong private sector to that relationship as well. So as one of the global centres, finance centres of the world, with our really strong business community present and out in force, this is about that total offer.
Okay, excellent. And what were the specific outcomes as relates to Nigeria?
So Nigeria was out in force at the summit. It was great to see. Of the African businesses who were present, 1 in 7 of those was Nigerian.
Oh, wow.
And when you consider that's a continent-wide event, that's really significant. The president was the only head of state and government to have met with both our Prime Minister and our Prince of Wales.
Okay.
We had Nigerians present, visible in every segment of the summit. They were the only country to have been present at all of the satellite events around the summit. So a really strong showing for Nigeria. We announced on the day £324 million worth, that's over 150 billion naira of commercial deals, plus another for £40 million agreed actually on the day itself. And that's really what this event was all about, those commercial deals. But as well as that, on the government side, we announced new and extended partnerships covering issues as diverse as strengthening the finance sector in Nigeria, accelerating the growth of clean energy, and promoting young people and women getting more access to the support they need to set up businesses in Nigeria.
Exactly. The diversified economy needs young people and women being more active. Now, we understand that there were some bilateral meetings that took place between UK and Nigerian leaders. Can you shed any light on those meetings that took place?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, the President Buhari met with our Prince of Wales, His Royal Highness. One of the things that they talked about particularly was the importance of agriculture as a growth sector in Nigeria, the potential for that sector to boost economic growth here, to create the jobs that Nigeria so desperately needs, but the importance of growing agriculture in a way that's environmentally sustainable. That topic again came up in the bilateral with the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, where they talked about the support that the UK could bring in government to government, but also the greater private sector investment that we would like to see from the UK into Nigeria's agriculture sector. They touched on other priorities for President Buhari's government, which we share as well, the importance of tackling the insurgency in the northeast, the importance of tackling corruption across Nigeria, many areas where the UK's interests are very closely aligned with Nigeria's own.
We're definitely going to need that. Now, D-Day has arrived, or come and gone. The UK has now left the EU. We're now in an 11-month transition period. What's next? I want to get your thoughts on this, as far as Britons, Nigerians living in Britain, and the overall relationship between the two nations post-Brexit.
Yeah, so this is an exciting day as we start what's a new era for ourselves in the United Kingdom. And it's an opportunity for us to position ourselves on the global stage to really show what global Britain means. We want to reassert ourselves as a liberal, free-trading nation, a nation that's committed to morals across the world, that wants to be a force for good. What that means for Nigeria, we've just talked about the Africa Investment Summit and the particular focus that we're putting on our relationship with countries outside of the EU, both commercial and development, promoting human rights, etc. But also our relationship with the European Union and members of the European Union. We want to have a relationship that is cooperative, that is a partnership, but from a position of greater democratic autonomy, where we're able to speak with a clear, independent voice on the issues that really matter for today, but also looking forward for tomorrow as well.
Great stuff, great stuff. Now, I want to talk China now. So many Africans, indeed many Nigerians, have a long relationship with Britain through the Commonwealth and other pacts, but China has now risen as a new trading partner. And some would say that China sees long-term potential of Africa, while the West sees challenges. I wanted to get your thoughts on, where you sit on that notion.
Yeah, and our Prime Minister at the Africa Investment Summit picked up on particularly this point in his speech, where he pointed out that other countries like China, like Russia, France, Germany, the list goes on of countries who are holding their investment summits with Africa at the moment. And that's because I think the whole world recognises the important economic potential that Africa represents. And my country is not alone in that. We're out at the front of that pack. We've talked about the benefits that Nigeria got from the summit, but the UK got benefits too. Our investment stock into Nigeria stood at over 4 billion, I think 4.8 billion in 2018. Okay. We want to see that increase. We recognise that Africa is the only continent on the world that has a growing population. And Nigeria, with the size of its population, with the size of its market, the size of its economy, it's a key part of that. So we fully intend to take on the leads that we saw come out of the investment summit and turn those into concrete deliverables.
Fantastic. Very, very quickly, we have a few seconds here. Many critics of Nigeria said that the country hasn't done enough in terms of the ease of doing business. How has the UK managed to become a magnet for investment?
So we focus very hard on making it easier for entrepreneurs to start a business, and the UK is now one of the easiest countries in the world where we can. So that's looking very carefully at regulation, making sure that regulation supports sectors to grow, gives them the opportunity and the space to grow whilst protecting them where protection is needed. We want to do that internationally, and we've been supporting in Nigeria for a long time now the Presidential Ease of Doing Business Council, the Investment Promotion Commission, all of these agencies that are doing precisely that, looking at the problems that businesses face, both Nigerian as well as foreign, right here in Nigeria, and trying to overcome those problems. It's been great to see Nigeria rise up the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business Index.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
There's more to be done. I think the government would recognise that, and certainly that's the message that we hear from private sector here, both Nigerian and British. But we're looking forward to continue to support them as they make further improvements.
Fantastic. I actually bought a little more time here. I want to quickly get your thoughts on climate change initiatives. There was some news about the Church of England making like a £600 million investment in an index that would track companies that align with the Paris Climate Change Agreement. I wanted to get your thoughts on how you see that here in Africa and what you're pushing with regards to climate change.
So actually there were some announcements related to this at the Africa Investment Summit. So support to accelerate that transition towards clean energy here in Nigeria. Particularly interesting, I think, here is the Climate Finance Accelerator. So we're putting £10 million in to just Nigeria and South Africa as the countries with the most potential here to support them accessing a greater proportion of the global climate finance that is available. At the moment, Nigeria gets around about as much as Rwanda. When you consider the size of Rwanda, the size of Nigeria, that's not right. So we're looking forward to fixing that.
Harriet Thompson.